All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you hope you enjoyed your afternoon workshops. So we're at the tail end of our day. Not really, we have a presentation. And I would like to welcome Dr. Angela Crutchfield for our afternoon keynote on Cultural Competence Begins with Self. She'll focus on the importance of assessment as a starting point for sustainable cultural change. And she's a transformational human resource professional and a diversity and inclusion practitioner. So welcome, Angela. Or Dr. Angela.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon. If I keep doing what I've always done, I will keep getting what I've always gotten. At some point, I've got to think about change. And change begins right here with me. Right? Y'all with me? Everybody with me? It starts with me. So you all have had a wonderful conference today, a lot of good information, and then they told me to come in here and beat up on you. No, they didn't. I promise. I promise. I promise. So I won't do that. But I will challenge you. I will give you some thoughts, some ideas, some things that you might need to think about as opportunities for yourself to drive change and difference. When we think about this topic of cultural competence, it's going to be a lot that I'm going to talk about. A lot of good information, but let me start with a good afternoon to each of you. I am Dr. Angela Crutchfield, and I like to tell people 3 simple things about myself. I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm blessed. And if you know those 3 things about me, you know exactly who I am. I'm not defined by where I live, what I do, what I drive, or even what you think about me. Those things tell you who I am. And I should be afforded the opportunity to be exactly who I am. But what happens day in and day out? We don't afford people that opportunity, right? Because we put judgments upon them. We have thoughts about them. We had a conversation just out in the lobby, and I said, I did that sitting on a plane, where I'm sitting here thinking, okay, he probably has COVID because he keeps coughing, right? Right? It's what we do. It's what we do. But if you know those things that I share with you about me, you know who I am. But you have to afford me the opportunity to do that. And I'm going to give you some tips a little bit later to help you with that. Now, just because I have this perspective doesn't mean that other people have that perspective. Some of you may not have that perspective in this room, which means there is more work that needs to be done in this space of creating an organization, a community, a household, a church, a business that is considerate of all people, where we are taking a simple formula that I'm going to share with you a little bit later. Diversity plus inclusion equals cultural competence. Can't have one without the other. It's a simple formula, and we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes. The focus of today's conference is an example of the many dimensions of diversity, and I talk about dimensions of diversity all the time in all of the work that I do. And when we think about closing the cultural and linguistic gap, I personally believe it can be done. How many of you believe it can be done? Oh, see, that's not good. Those hands should have been up, clapping, jumping. If you don't believe it, who's gonna believe it? If you don't believe it, because you know where it starts. Where did I say change starts? Starts right here with me, and it has to be a belief first. If you don't even believe it, how in the world can we achieve it? Not gonna happen. I just kind of made that up, but I think I heard somebody say it before. So today I'm going to talk about cultural competence. What is it? Let's define it. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the impact of me, M-E, me, And I want you to be, I don't see anybody taking notes. I need you all to start taking some notes because this is going to be some good stuff, I promise. Then we're going to look at the importance of self-assessment. And you're going to leave here today with a challenge in that space. But we're going to talk about self-assessment. We will set a temperature for change today. That's what I want to challenge you to do because everything and everyone has opportunity for change. Every moment is an opportunity for change. But first, let's look at our current state reality. And I'm going to do this quickly because if I spend too much time on this current state reality, we might be here all night, and I don't want you all walking out on me. I really don't. I want you to stay with me, so I promise I'll do it quickly. We have a current reality that reflects a lack of consideration of other people. Would that be an accurate description? We have differences, but people don't respect those differences. And can you believe this? My yellow twin, can you believe this? That we are watching the news right now, and not news, social media, people upset because we have a little, beautiful, amazing black young lady playing Little Mermaid. What? What's wrong with us? I mean, is it just me or something wrong with that? Something's wrong with that we're having debates and we've got negativity because this beautiful, talented, black young lady is a character from a cartoon. Maybe it's just me. It's not just me. Something is wrong that we're putting judgments upon this young lady who is brilliantly talented and causing her to feel some kind of way. What is that? We're putting judgment upon people for something that doesn't even make any sense. Our current reality requires that we take about 10 steps back at least to assess, then reset the narrative that has existed for far too long. And it's not a narrative that's just in our country, but we know it's glaring in our country. What is that narrative? There is a lack of cultural sensitivity and consideration of all individuals and accepting us individually for who we are and valuing us for who we are. We live in a society that reflects behaviors that limit others because of what? The color of our skin, whether we're a part of the LGBTQ plus community, if you have an assistive device of some sort, if we have what we call an accent, and oh, by the way, we all have one. I don't want to get too caught up in that, though. So let's stop that, all of you Bostonians, right? Right? We have to do work in this space. And I could go on and on about those many dimensions. But let's briefly examine what is the root of the problem. Basically, we need culture change. This is an image I'm sure some of you have seen many times. Much of what you have experienced here today should send you away with a challenge to do more. If you hadn't gotten it yet, I hope in this next hour that I can give you that challenge to do more, to be a contributor to the needed culture change. That's what this is all about. What is that needed change, you might ask? Becoming culturally competent. It's a journey, and it begins with self. Now, as we close out this day, let's focus on the importance of assessment as our first step. That's our starting point for what I call sustainable culture change. And there has to be a commitment from each one of you individually that says, I'm going to be committed to true sustainable culture change. Change starts with me. Now, this image, as I said, is probably familiar to many of you or some of you. It really speaks to why we continue to talk about the importance of creating a diverse and inclusive culture. We have to move from the reality of the inequalities that we have to this ultimate place of justice for all. Yes, what do we say? Liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance, right? Liberty and justice for all. But do we have it? What'd you say? No. Say it loud, say it proud. No. When we get it right, people like me will be worked out of a job. I won't need to talk about this anymore. I'll have to find a career. I'll have to go find something else to do other than going and sitting down with CEOs and talking to people about, have you thought about this? Did you think about that? Unfortunately, and this is not to be divisive in any way, I'm just stating reality. Unfortunately, what's considered mainstream America or the dominant culture in America or in our country is reflective of, you all want me to give the descriptors? Middle age and older, Caucasian men, cisgen of a certain economic status. That's not being ugly, that's not being negative, that's just being real. And our country was founded in a certain way that all of us, including those of you who might be Caucasian women, we're outside of that circle. That circle is there, and all the rest of us are outside of it. That created that measurement that we call diversity. Everybody is measured against that population. That's our reality. That's our reality. And if we can at least be open to the conversation about that reality, we can get to a better place. Instead of arguing and saying, no, it's not about an argument. And it's work that all of us, even those inside of the circle and those of us outside of the circle, we all have work to do. We all can be contributors to the needed change. We have to remove the wall of divide, that circle we have to remove it. That's the only way we can be in this place of true justice and thoughtfulness of all people. Becoming culturally competent is what we want because that's demonstrating justice for all. And there are many things that drive the need for true sustainable culture change. The topic for today is just one of many. And this is a journey, everyone. It's not going to happen. We didn't get here overnight. So we can't possibly change it overnight. But we can change it if we're all willing to do the work. Making sure we are aware of others that are around us. The importance of valuing every individual, every family. There's no regarding them in spite of, oh, we're just going to do it. No, we got to do it because people are valuable. But when we think about our current state, with all of that in mind, what is cultural competence? What and why is change even needed? To value others, I have to be considerate of them and all that makes them who they are. This requires cultural competence. Earlier today, you heard from your first keynote, the two keynote speakers earlier, they talked about cultural humility, right? Anybody? Someone tell me, what did they give you as the definition of cultural humility? Anybody? Pull out those notes or something. Somebody tell me something. Anybody? A lifelong learner. Okay, I can take that. Others? Cultural humility as defined this morning. Yes. You recognize you have more to learn. Anyone else? I heard someone else. Yes. Absolutely. It is a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique where you learn about others' cultures, but you can't do that until you learn about yourself. That's a part of the problem. We don't even know ourselves. We do not even know ourselves, and that creates a challenge. You've got to start this journey with an examination of our own beliefs and identities. Cultural competence, loosely defined, is the ability to understand, to appreciate, and have interaction with people who might be different from us. Different cultures, different belief systems, different perspectives from ours. And oh, by the way, we all have culture. We got to stop that narrative too. That the only people who we have to touch when it comes to culture are people who come in from another country. Stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. We all are valuable. it's a journey. It's all a journey for us of self-discovery and discovery of others. Now let me pause here and say again, the culture, we all have it. We all have, or someone speaks another language and we go into panic mode. Why? Let's just get what we need to help the person if we don't understand them, or find better ways. I was married. Yeah, I did that. I have to own it. I take responsibility for it, and I also own the fact that I walked away. But I remember during the years that I was married, we had a person who would come and cut the yard and do the, whatever in the yard, because I had a husband who wouldn't do it. You see why I walked away? Yeah. He would use a snowblower, would do that, and I would look out the window. But anyway, this person was Portuguese. So he would come and try and explain what he was going to be doing on a specific day that was outside of the norm. And it was something simple like, I'm going to do bushes. A bush, I trim. What do I interpret that to me? I'm going to trim the bushes. It didn't take anything major to figure it out. It just took a moment for me to pay attention. But before I came out to hear that, this was my ex-husband. Angela, can you come out here and talk to this man? I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm thinking, really? So I go out, and he said exactly what I just said, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. It's being patient. It's taking the time. It's not that difficult. We make this too difficult. It doesn't have to be that difficult. Cultural competence will help us change our perspective about people who might be different, and different meaning different from us. When we think about this whole journey of cultural competence, we have to understand that there are many dimensions of diversity. There are many dimensions that we have to give consideration to. Competence requires that you give the many dimensions consideration. Things such as we've talked about today, I'm sure, language, cultural perspectives, values, beliefs, behaviors. And those things include things such as ethnicity, lifestyle, habits, religious practices, attitudes towards others, socioeconomic status, race, gender, sexual orientation, physical and mental abilities. What else? Shout out some more dimensions. Or did I give them all? Give me some more. Education, yes. Others. Veteran status, love that. Others. Religion, yes. Others. Healthcare. Tell me more. I wish I had a mic. Tell me more. When you say healthcare, why do you say healthcare? Access. You're talking access. Got it. Access. And then the potential disparities. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Others. Body orientation, yes. Others. Personality traits, yes. Others. Location. And think about even location from the perspective of our current state. Some people have worked remote for almost 3 years, have not seen anyone face to face, which is a completely different conversation, because that then steps into challenges that people are having from a mental health perspective, working in isolation. But even that is a dimension of diversity. My point here is we've got to consider it. Why? Why do these differences matter? How we see the world, how others see us, and how they experience us, experiencing others, valuing individuals for who they are. Unfortunately, we see more negativity than that. We have to end the negative outcomes. The effect of bias, stereotypes, all of those things that show up are also a reflection of the fact that we have so much diversity. People are judgmental of other people if they are not like them. We end up having discriminatory behaviors that have to be addressed. Differences should matter in a positive way because it allows each individual to bring their authentic self to any human interaction. Authenticity and inclusion go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. When we think about authenticity and inclusion, what makes us who we are? What are those influences? For our efforts to value people for who they are and be successful at that, we have to consider what makes each person who they are. Earlier, I think you all had a family panel. Some of you attended probably the family panel. Am I correct? Yeah. And when I look at that particular panel, I really think about focusing on that panel, focusing on the values and the belief systems that we must understand. You should have had opportunity to hear the voice of people who shared that kind of information based on their experiences. Our parental influence is a huge one. It's a huge one. A lot of us walk around and live our lives based on what's been instilled in us, versus what we've established for ourselves. If mama said it, if daddy said it, if papa said it, if granny said it, that makes it so. Gender, race, all of these things. If you don't see my race, guess what? You don't see me. So when I hear people say, oh, no, I'm colorblind. I'm colorblind. That's not a good thing because you don't see me. You don't value me. We got to value people and understand that the authenticity of who I am is reflected in that which makes me who I am. My education. Do you all know, for someone like me, this little black female from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised, and I love Elvis. I just tell you right now, I love Elvis. Born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Do you know how much I have to prove who I am? Do you know how many people disrespect me when I've been doing this work for 30 years? I still have to walk in a room and explain my education. I have colleagues who don't have to put up a slide and talk about their background. But I do, because I'm judged, because I'm discriminated against, because I'm treated poorly. So I know what that feels like. It doesn't matter what the dimension is that is being discriminated against. That discrimination, that hits home. You know what that feels like. And it's not acceptable. You've got to value people for who they are. And these are some of the things that help demonstrate the authenticity of who I am. But what happens? It ends up being these factors that attribute to that negativity that we need to get rid of. In the same way authenticity is driven by those components that make us who we are, we must note that those same components contribute to factors that are attributable to assumptions and discriminatory behavior such as bias, microaggressions, prejudice, and we could go on and on. Family dynamics, how we are raised, how we're socialized. Basically, oftentimes people have judgments towards others without knowing anything about them. The optics. I walk in the door and I'm judged. I have a 24-year-old son. And I remember my son started driving. I would always say to my son, come home, son. Come home safe, son. Be safe out there, son. And I still to this day tell him, be safe, son. But that has a totally different meaning for my black 24-year-old son than it means for other people. I'm not knocking anybody and your children. I'm sure they're beautiful. I'm sure they're wonderful. But I'm telling you, it's a different experience for what I know my son is. A totally different experience. So I have to prepare him. I've continued to prepare him. Even at 24, I'm still constantly giving him kind of input and guidance. And I'm always saying, be safe, son. We can have a whole workshop on that, but we won't do that. But we've got to make sure that we're really thoughtful about all of these types of things and how it can show up negatively, positively. In some cases, we equate it to being common sense. And now, I'm not talking about common sense of don't go out in the street and get hit by a car. We all know that. I'm talking about those things that we walk around that we think is common sense that really isn't common sense. It's really prejudice. I love Einstein's quote. Einstein said, common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired before the age of 18. And if we were to talk about prejudice, it's that adverse opinion or that leaning formed without just grounds or before sufficient knowledge is gained. Isn't that powerful when you really think about it? There are things that are instilled in us that came down generation to generation, and we carry it, and we don't even know why. This is why you have to do your work to do your own self-assessment. Cultural competence has some essential elements. We've got to manage this thing called diversity more effectively in our own personal lives and in the workplace. You know, you got to remember that cultural competence requires us to have that first component of diversity. Where we make the biggest mistake, we don't include all people in the discussion of culture. Everybody has to be included in that. We all have a cultural background, as I said earlier. Even those of you who are of a lighter complexion, you do too, okay? And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. These elements are things I want you to consider. Manage that diversity, value inclusion. Your journey to cultural competence will require you to conduct self-assessments to determine where you are in looking at those two categories. And note here, this is not just you as an individual. When we talk about assessment, it's also assessing your organization. But it has to start with you. If you don't have the right perspective about diversity and inclusion equaling cultural competence, how in the world can you look at your organization and say, oh, wow, we are slipping? You can't do it because you don't have the right lens. So you've got to assess yourself and determine what things need to be done differently. Now, we can't be blind to differences. That's an important thing I want to make sure I say. You know, if we say those things that I said earlier, we're all the same. You know, I don't see color. My lens of diversity is color. No. That sounds good. But what is better is that we value differences. And we say things such as, we're all the same differently. And that's okay. I want to be who I am. I don't want to be Ellen. You might be nice, Ellen. I don't want to be you. I want to be me. I want to be me. And for me, this means I don't want to be in what this westernized melting pot. You know what I want to be in? I want to be in a tossed salad, right? You know how it is here in Boston with the peppers and the onions, right? That's the environment I want to be in, where I am valued and you can taste everything in that salad, right? You got everything mixed. I want to make sure that I'm in that environment. Diversity really is as we look at the formula, and I'll show you that in a minute, diversity is really more of a quantitative approach to change. Inclusion is more of a qualitative approach, where we're thinking about how we're bringing everybody in and valuing them for who they are. We can't have one without the other. So it's not bad to have diversity, but it's not good if you don't have inclusion. You've got to make sure you have both of those things. And the work, again, it starts with you. I want to give you a few things that I think can help you, in thinking about how you can drive true sustainable culture change. If we're going to demonstrate culture change, one key thing that I want to challenge you all to do is think about how you close the gap between your intent and your impact. Because all too often, we miss out on these three communication variables. You might have wonderful intention, but the behavioral choices you make can result in a negative impact. Okay? So intent, behavioral choices, and impact. You might intend to give me a compliment, but the way you say it, I may say, well, that wasn't a compliment. I don't know what that was. And you know where the problem comes in? We don't give the feedback that's needed. We've got to be able to give feedback and be open to that feedback so that we can close that gap and make a different choice. Intent, behavioral choices, impact. Feedback gives you opportunity to make a different choice. That means I'm going to go back and do something a little bit different in however I'm approaching the situation the next time. Cultural competence means we choose behaviors that result in the desired impact. We judge ourselves, by the way, by our intentions. Others judge us by what? Our impact. Cultural competence means that we're going to choose behaviors that result in the desired impact. The impact that you have on another person. It's their perception. It's their experience, and our perception is our reality. And we can't devalue that when someone comes forward and shares their truth. We've got to take that in, and you made me feel a certain way. Or I heard you say this. I want to make sure I'm clear on what it is that you meant when you said that. Whatever it is, we've got to be able to put that together. You have a choice in how you're going to treat others. I want someone to tell me the golden rule. Anybody, shout it out. What's the golden rule? I think I heard it. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's really good, isn't it? It really is. I think the golden rule is amazing. It's crossed millennials. It's crosses religion. It's all wonderful. But I want to challenge you. Next thing I want you to do, evoke the platinum rule. The platinum rule says, treat others the way they want to be treated. And if I'm going to treat you a certain way, that means I need to get to know you. I need to have conversation with you. I need to ask you questions. I can't make assumptions about you. You can't make assumptions about families who need your support. Don't make assumptions. Have conversation. If you can't have it, get somebody in the room that can have the conversation so we can make sure we are not bumping up against healthcare disparities, right? Didn't we hear that back there? Health being a difference, but it becomes disparities when we're not considerate of all people and their experiences. So make sure that we evoke that platinum rule. The golden rule is wonderful, but take it to the next level. And it's really simple, everybody. It's a simple formula. D plus I equals CC. Yeah, you can remember that, right? D plus I equals CC. Diversity plus inclusion equals cultural competence. And what we want to do is have what I call a cultural competence party. When I say diversity, I want you to invite me to the party. But when I get there, somebody better ask me to dance. And oh, by the way, cultural competence, don't you judge my dancing. Don't make assumptions that I can dance. Somebody told me that once in a meeting, in a work-related event years ago. Come on, Angela, get up. We know you can dance. And I'm thinking, who said that? Can't even dance, seriously. But they made a judgment, put some pressure on me. I'm a black female. I was supposed to be able to get up in the electric slide or something. That's what they wanted. I couldn't do it. And oh, let me add one in there. Let's add equity in there. That means you're not going to charge me to come into the party unless you charge everybody else. And what about equality? That equality. I should be in the running to be the queen of the dance, right? Just like everybody else. So we've got to be thoughtful about these things. Oftentimes, you don't have control over how diverse, people are around you. Sometimes we can't control that, right? But you are responsible for how inclusive you are and how you treat other people. That's within your control. Diversity, quantitative, inclusion, qualitative. Qualitative is me doing something, me demonstrating something. They're often put together as one word, but we've got to separate that so we can make sure we get it right. Diversity plus inclusion equals cultural competence. And you know who it starts with? Starts with me. I got to understand my role. Creating that environment where all are invited to the party, we have to start with the person in the mirror. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. You all know that. I'm asking him to, come on. I'm messaging any clearer. If you want to meditate, okay, forget it. We try. But it starts with me. Got to understand my role. Let me break that me down. I'm going to give you a couple of things. It starts with me. Me, first of all, make effort. You got to make some effort. You got to put forth a little bit of effort. That means you're going to understand what you don't know about yourself and others. I'm going to be intentional about learning. If there are populations of people that you work with, people that you serve, people that move next door, do something to learn something about them. Become culturally competent. Make the effort. Do the work, even if it's hard. Even if you say, Dr. Angela, I don't like to read. Okay, get an ebook. Audiobook. So you can learn something. Manifest effectiveness. This means you're going to, keeping the intention and the vision consistently in your focus. This can't be the flavor of the month. This can't be, I heard this at a conference, it was good. And then next week I come and visit you and you're like, oh wait, so what did you say? Shouldn't be that way. Demonstrate effective communication. Communication is the core of everything we do. We have to be effective in our communication. We also want to be positive and proactive as you do what you need to do to make things happen. Intent and impact. We talked about that already. It requires you making a different choice. Did I say something that might have been offensive? Let me think about that, and let me go back and make an adjustment. Because I noticed that Angela just walked off when I said something. I thought it was funny, and she gave me a look. That look, that's your pause point. If I look and say, what did she say? Did she just call me up? Whatever that moment is, you have to take that cue. And then lastly, for me, manage engagement. That means I'm going to evoke that platinum rule that I talked about. I've got to make sure that I'm being thoughtful about that. Now, there are some things, when I want to go back real quickly on that manifest effectiveness, sometimes it's tough because we are thinking about this in the wrong way, meaning we're trying to do things that's not in our swim lane. Okay? So change has to be within your reach. So you want to be positive and proactive. And there's a simple framework that Stephen Covey uses that he talks about, and he calls it operating within the circle of influence. The circle of concern, things that we might be concerned about, the weather. Anybody that got people in Florida, we're worried about that right now. But there's nothing we can do about that. That's not within our control. What's within my control is I was in Tampa and I knew I needed to get on a plane and get out of Tampa. Similar to my sister who got on a plane with me who lives in Tampa. Before they evacuated, she's like, I'm leaving with you. So we have things that are within our reach. That is where I want you to plug and play. I want you to think about that which you have control over, that which you can do something. Even if it's just simply, again, getting a book and reading a book. Engaging in a conversation with someone who you've not engaged in a conversation with before. Going and taking a Spanish class just because you know you regularly get Spanish-speaking clients. Whatever is within your reach, get that. Not that which is overshooting. Do what you can handle. In the workplace, you want to be thoughtful, getting the right tools, making sure that you're leveraging resources that can help you be thoughtful about this piece around diversity. And one of the key things that we're going to challenge you with today, you got to self-assess. Self-assessing is vital. And how do you make the needed changes? This all basically, everything I've talked about so far, this basically leads to you and the very important task of self-assessment. What do I need to do, Dr. Angela? First of all, you've got to make sure you build your personal awareness. It's the first step. If you are not aware of certain things, if you have not taken the time to assess yourself from that perspective, like, wait, do I have some shortcomings? Did I say something wrong? Or am I not doing what I'm supposed to? You've got to start there, raising your awareness about what things you might need to do. Acknowledge what needs to change. And then you've got to start asking questions. I'm going to give you a few questions to think about. You want to identify any negative perceptions that you have of other individuals. To help change how we respond when our negative emotions about others are triggered, think about stopping and asking yourself, what is my belief about this person or this culture? Do I deeply believe this to be true? What effect is this having on me, my job, my family? Is there a different way I can view this person or this situation? This is what thoughtfulness about diversity, inclusion, and being culturally competent actually means. Even though you might feel in your case that you're accepted and everybody should be accepted and everybody's appreciated and recognized, and that others, feeling like an outsider, I don't see how they feel that way. I feel okay. It's not about you. What did we just say? The platinum rule. That means I'm thinking about others and I'm giving consideration to others. Continuing that assessment process for yourself. Am I blind to differences? This is an interesting one because we don't want to be blind to differences, but I think a lot of times we actually are because we don't take the time to assess our perspective and how we might be looking at people in a certain way or treating people a certain way. Am I blind to difference? Do I accept others' perceptions as true for them? Impact. Am I accepting that impact as their truth? And am I doing something to close the gap so that my intent shows up the way I want it to show up? Does my intent and behavioral choices align with impact? Am I positive and proactive? Am I working within that which I can handle? Am I an effective communicator? Do I invoke that platinum rule? These are just some simple things that you can think about asking yourself daily, so that you can start making change and making a different choice in the different scenarios that you may find yourself in. What can you do? So glad you asked. I just so happen to have this model called the LEPUS model. It's called the Culture Change LEPUS Culture Change Model. It's really simple. First of all, we've got to start listening. Listen. Beyonce says that, right? Listen. We got to start listening. That means we're going to take in information. We want to understand what people's experiences are. What is this experience like? And if they tell me something, I need to do something about it. One of the worst things companies do, they will offer an employee satisfaction survey or an engagement survey, get back data, and do nothing with it. That means you're not even listening to me. You're not even taking in the information. If you're assessing clients, getting information from them, listen to them and do something with that. And then educate yourself. Learn what you don't know about yourself and others. I've said it multiple times. Pick up a book. People, during the post the death of George Floyd, I did more within Riverside and outside Riverside around diversity and inclusion training. And people, well, what can I do? Just go pick up a book. But learn about the experiences of people in this country who look like me, because our experiences it's our truth. And it's the reality of our country. And then you need a plan. You need a plan. That plan has to be something that's going to be actionable. And then you actually act on whatever it is that you put together, implementing what you say you need to do differently. This can be just for yourself. In your own personal life, you can journal something about what you know you need to do differently. Nobody needs to know that but you. Now, you might show up at work the next day and people say, what is going on with Ellen? Oh, my goodness, she's never been that nice. No, I'm just kidding, Ellen. I know you're nice. And then we want to sustain it. We have to sustain whatever it is we're doing. So these are just a few items that you want to think about. So let's sum this up. First of all, listen. Let's just listen to me. The future is yours to create. It absolutely is yours to create. You can, ignore it, but I don't think you can much longer. You can't ignore our history, and you can't ignore the need for change. And you be open to understanding our present experiences that I talked to you about earlier, and you have to do the work to change our future. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to be more culturally competent. It begins with each one of you. And you have to assess and reset. And Ellen is going to give you a challenge in a few minutes that will give you opportunity to do just that. Understand the importance of increasing your own cultural competence. Know the impact of me and recognize your impact. Self-assess to know where you are and what you need to do differently. This is for you, for your circle, for your organization, for your community. The assessment on all these things that need to change or be done differently starts with you. And move forward with sustaining that change. I want to end with an interesting. Well, I always end in this way, but some of you don't know me, so there's a song that I believe Quincy Jones wrote it. George Benson, I think, recorded it. A couple other folks recorded it. I don't have a track, but that's all right. And I might even crack. That rhymed. Crack. I'm sorry. But everything must change. We have to be thoughtful about that change. And the lyrics of this song, and I'm going to try and do as much of it as I can until I mess up. When I mess up, I'm going to stop, okay? But the song simply says, everything must change. Nothing stays the same. Everything must change. nothing stays the same. The young become the old. Mysteries do unfold, 'cause that's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged. There are not many things in life you can be sure of, except rain comes from the clouds. We can't control that, right? Sun lights up the sky. We can't do anything about that. And hummingbirds do fly. And winter turns to spring. And wounded hearts will heal. Never much too soon. Everything must change. Everything must change. And I'll end there. Everything. Everything. We change everything. So thank you for having me here today. Do your part. Obsess. Move forward. It starts with self. Thank you so much, Ellen. If you all need me, you can find me on social media. You are so welcome. Thank you so much. Let me give you a slap.
Well, thank you, Dr. Angela. You have a beautiful voice, and that was great. Great session. So I do have a challenge. So I want to end the day with the challenge, and I want us all to stay focused on raising the bar in supporting culturally diverse families and individuals. So we want everybody here to take an intentional look at your practices, both as individuals and for your centers and your areas. We provided a couple of samples of self-assessment in your packets today. You can use them or any other tool to assess your own centers and to look at areas that are strengths and areas that you could use improvement on. And our collective goal, all of us here, is to be able to provide culturally competent supports and services to families throughout Massachusetts. So we're inviting all of you to join us in the spring in regional forums to share the results of these self-assessments, what you've learned, what you will be doing differently. We'll be able to share best practices and successful strategies. So that's the challenge for all of you. So thank you all. This has been a great day, and really, you helped so many families. This has been great. I just, hopefully you all had a great day as well. So.